everyone, Miranda here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today I'm doing a video on the books I have read during quarantine / isolation / lockdown, whatever you want to call it. So in Melbourne, Australia, we had a lockdown back in March and then it disappeared back into stage 3, and now in Melbourne we're back into stage 4. So during these last few months I have read a lot of books. In 5 months during this whole thing I have read 23 books, which is an average of about 4.5 books a month. And I am wrapped. That is a great reading goal, considering before that I was like averaging probably like 1 book every 2 months. Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. Now this came out obviously this year. You can see it's very fresh. I still had the price tag on it. I don't know why I do this with books. Like I still keep the price tag on. Chain of Gold is the new trilogy that takes place after Infernal Devices in the Mortal Instruments universe, as we like to call it. This tells the story of Cordelia Casters. For those of you that don't know Mortal Instruments, I have them tattooed on me. It's great. But Mortal Instruments basically is about shadow hunters, which are like demon fighters, and yeah, Cassandra Clare, the author, has really created a whole universe which dives into multiple generations of these demon hunters. Like there's a bunch of different families. Every single book series that she writes kind of ties into the previous one with some of the characters, etc. It's just what happened after the Infernal Devices, which is the prequel to the Mortal Instruments series. The Infernal Devices took place in the 1800s, so now we get the early 1900s. It was great diving into a new era with this book, and I really did enjoy Cordelia's story. You can read these books separately from each other as well, but I prefer reading them in order, or the orders that it says to read them in online, which is like Mortal Instruments, Infernal Devices, Dark Artifacts, Chain of Gold, and then there's a few extra books as well in the series, like the Bane Chronicles, Tales from Shadowhunter Academy. I have them all up on my bookshelf. I really loved James and Lucy in this book. I thought Tessa and Will's kids were great, but it's really going to be interesting to see the relationship between James and Cordelia because it was so arranged, which I didn't think it would be. So I can't wait to do a review on this shortly, so stay tuned for that to go into more detail. The Winner's Curse trilogy. I have the other books on my shelf, but I can't be stuffed putting them here. This was a very mixed thoughts on this one here. A general's daughter in a vast empire that reveals in war and enslaves those it conquers. So Kestrel has 2 choices. She can join the military or get married, but she has other ideas. One day she's at this market because she's like uber rich, and she buys this slave boy called Aaron, and it sounded really bad. I didn't mean it to sound that bad. Yeah, she finds a kindred spirit in him, they get along, but there's more behind him that meets the eye, and obviously there's this whole rebellion thing that happens, and things go on. I liked the second book the most in this trilogy. The first one, I just felt it really lacked depth. I really wanted to know more what goes inside these characters' heads. I wanted to understand them better, but I felt like I was just getting cut. I don't know why. It's not a bad trilogy. I love the covers more than I like the books. Stay on the thing. Stay. The Tattooist of Auschwitz. Now my mum read this. My best friend's now reading this. I recommended this to people. Everyone's freaking reading it, so it is great. By Heather Morris. After reading this, I actually started watching some documentaries and actually talks that Heather Morris did. This tells the story of Lali and his story in Auschwitz. Now he was the tattooist. So when obviously all Thank you. And all the Jews would come in to the camp, he would tattoo them. It's actually fascinating because a lot of the people to this day at the Holocaust Museum in Melbourne and stuff like that, actually the number that they have tattooed on them when they do their talks is actually from Lali, so they've actually mentioned him. So it's cool how this all interconnects. It's his story in Auschwitz and how he fell in love with his wife. in the camp, which is unreal. And despite all the horrible things that ended up happening to them, there was a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, and it really just sheds a light on the things that we should be thankful for, the little things, because what these people went through in the past is just, I can't even describe. Like, it is something else completely. And, you know, we whine about little things and obviously this coronavirus, but what these people had to go through, especially the winters in the camp, when the bunks and they didn't have it, it blows my mind that this is even human. Based off a true story. Some bits Heather Morris did put in the book that didn't really happen to Lali. Obviously she had to fill in some gaps. I think it's going to become a Netflix series, believe it or not, so I really hope that happens. Now, I did buy the sister book as well to that, which is Silka's Journey. Silka is one of the characters in the Tattooist of Auschwitz that is friends with obviously Lali's wife. We do get certain like snippets of her in there, but this book tells her story. Just being a woman in general and the way women were obviously treated back then is very different, and the way she was treated in Auschwitz, plus then obviously going to another camp afterwards and working and just kind of trapped. This woman is so strong. Definitely I recommend this book. It is a must have read. The next book I read was Ghost House and also Haunted, so both these books in this series. So the other one's on my shelf because I can't be stuffed getting it. I read a few years ago and I really enjoyed it, about this girl called Chloe Kennedy, and after her mother dies, she goes off with her grandmother, and her grandmother lives on this giant estate in England, and it's really old, but her grandmother's obviously renovated it. Chloe, the main character, has always seen ghosts her whole life. Like, she has this thing for the paranormal, like it sings to her. And one day she meets this ghost there, they fall in love, and then you're just like, oh my god, but he's a ghost and she's real. And then there's this other evil ghost. The other evil ghost was together with the guy that she falls in love with, and then this evil ghost is trying to like kill her, and things get hectic. And then I ended up getting the second book, which is on my shelf, called Haunted. So I read both of them, and I didn't really like Haunted as much as I like Ghost House. And the ending to the whole series was really like, what? Next book I read during this period was Red Queen, and I read all 4 of them, so the whole series. I did not like this book. When I first read it years ago, I did not. I thought it was very high fantasy and I just could not keep up with the words on the page. However, diving into this book now, years later, I fucking loved it. Reds are commoners ruled by silver elite in possession of godlike powers, and to Mare Burrow, a 17-year-old red girl from poverty-stricken Stills, it seems like nothing will ever change. There is a twist of fate though when she has powers. So basically the whole point is that the rulers of this place have silver blood. Some people have red blood like me and you, some people have silver blood. The ones with silver blood have powers and they rule over the red people, but then there's some red people that miraculously have like superpowers as well. Yeah, and then there's obviously the king and the queen and that whole saga of everything, and kind of Mare's thrown into there. She falls in love with like one of the princes. You know what I mean? I did like this book, and I will be doing a review on that series shortly. Book of Ivy, and there's the first book and the second book. After a brutal nuclear war, the United States was left kaput, a small group of survivors eventually banded together, but only after more conflict over which family would govern the new nation. The Westalls lost. 50 years later, peace and control are maintained by marrying the daughters of the losing side to the sons of the winning group in the yearly ritual. This year it is my turn, which is the main character. Not my turn, hell no. My name is Ivy Westfall, and my mission is simple: to kill the president's son, my soon-to-be husband, and return Westfall family to power. Well, she falls in love with Bishop, and there's this whole thing about what's outside the fence. It's a funny book, and it's a bit of like a cult-like thing. Ivy is from the original families. Like, her family originally ran what was this thing in the United States, and then shit went down with the Latmers against the Westfalls, and then the Latmers took over. Ivy's family was kind of like pushed, and then now she has to marry a Latner, and then she has to kill him to get back into power. Delirium by Lauren Oliver and the whole trilogy. I am trying to find the movie on YouTube if it still exists, because I cannot find it anywhere and I really want to watch the movie. But this is actually a really good book series. But the ending, I don't know what is with this ending, but it just is less of a hype. There was a time when the most important thing in the world, people would go to the end of the earth to find it. They would tell their lives for it, even kill for it. Then at last they found the cure. Love in this society is like a disease. When you come of age, you get like a treatment to not feel any emotion. Read Zach and Mia. The last person Zach expects in Room Next Door is a girl like Mia, angry, feisty, with questionable taste in music. In the real world, he couldn't be friends with her. In hospital, different rules apply, and what begins as a knock on the wall leads to a note and a friendship neither of them sees coming. Wasn't the best. I thought it was going to be more like Fault in Our Stars, but it's still a definite nice read. The last 2 books I read was Just One Day and Just One Year by Gail Forman. There will be a review on both books together. This was a really good read. So basically it's about this girl that meets this guy and they spend a day in Paris together. Tell me, what have you read recently? And if you've read any of these books, what are your thoughts on them? There will be reviews coming, so I'll speak more in detail about them there. But yes, thank you so much for tuning in, and talk to you all soon. Don't fall, don't fall. Fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. But they have other thoughts.